So many effing tabs. Why do I have so many
I
tabs?
know. I always notice the same thing when I'm doing something. I'm like, man, I have so many tabs open right now.
I yell at my kids. I'm like, don't close the tabs. There's stuff I want to do. Anyway, nice to have you on, by the way. I really enjoy your
Yeah.
podcast. For me, kind of, there's this big giant like area of pop punk that I am almost not familiar with because I went to college in the early 2000s and I started my job out here in LA at like 2008. So I'm like missing pretty big chunk of that era because I feel like it kind of went slightly into obscurity and then came back a little bit and then a little bit more, just kind of ebbs and flows. So it's nice to like, I'll go through and be like, okay, I know of this band. Oh, it's nice to hear from them, or it's nice to hear about them, or the new albums that you're talking about, and which ones probably to listen to over other ones because everybody throws out a ton of music. So like, I really appreciate your podcast.
Oh, well, thanks, man. No, that means a lot. And so far, the only episode I've listened to of yours is the last one with Brian, and I really enjoyed that one. So you do a great job. You do an interview well, I think. So
Well, thank you. Um,
yeah, you're welcome.
how did you? Because you've been doing this for like 3 years, right?
Four.
Four.
Pop Punk and Pizza I've been doing for four. All around I've been podcasting for 6 years now. So I'm obviously I didn't start when I'm not like a pioneer by any means because podcasting's been around forever, but
Mm.
I feel like I got into it um even before it's I don't know. I guess it's just growing and growing as you've noticed with podcasting. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Hmm.
More and more people are doing it, and especially 2020, I feel like it just like skyrocketed to where everybody's got a podcast. you know,
Yeah,
so
especially because of the not mentioned situation of 2020.
right, exactly. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride for the last 4 years for pop punk and pizza. That's how long this podcast has been around. Um, but I'm sorry, what was your question?
Oh, hold on a second.
And you're gonna hear my dog probably bark in the background there. I
No
apologize for
worries.
that.
You work at a radio station, right? What do you do?
I do, yes. I work at a small radio station company in my hometown area of Bourbonnais, Illinois. I've been there since I started in broadcasting in 2014. I went to like one of those. I call it a trade school, where it's like a year program, um, and it was called Illinois Center for Broadcasting. Now it's called Illinois Media School. But they just kind of within a year span, they just kind of run you through radio broadcasting, TV broadcasting, and then internet, and they just kind
Mm.
of lump everything together. And so I started to do that, and I did that for a year from 2014 to 2015, and I actually was interning at the radio station I currently work at. I was interning when I started school, and I was only interning for a couple months, and a job on air opened up, and I auditioned for it, and they ended up giving it to me, even though I did not sound great at all. It sounded horrible. It's like, hey, talking on the radio, how hard can it be? And then it turns out, oh, this is actually a lot harder than I thought. But then once you get your footing, it's like, oh, okay, this is actually really easy.
Hmm.
Um, but so yeah, that's my primary job. That's my job that brings home the bacon, so to speak. So I when I first started, I my first on air show was actually the company I work for has three radio stations. There's an oldies station, a country station, and then there's a top 40 pop station, which is the one I'm currently on, which the call letters are WFAV. But I was on the country station originally, and it had been a while since I listened to country music when I got that position on the station. So, I grew up listening to country, but I hadn't really listened to it much in the last 10 to 15 years. So it was really interesting diving back and kind of like how you were talking about earlier with, you know, not having, you weren't really, you've kind of didn't follow pop punk for a while and kind of missed on, some of the bands. It was kind of like the same thing with country. I'm like, who the heck are all these artists? Like, this isn't, Alan Jackson and all the, all
Tim
the stuff from the
McGraw,
90s. Yeah, right. It's like I grew up on 80s,
George
90s
Strait, and
country.
yeah.
Yeah, George George Strait, and like I said, Alan Jackson, Garth Brooks, yeah, Tim McGraw, all those. So that was interesting diving back into that. So I did that for 2 or 3 years, and then a position opened up to do mornings on the pop station. So I went ahead and I took that, and at the same time, and in order to have a full time job in most places, and I'm sure you know this, and pretty much anyone listening knows this. It doesn't matter if it's a music related job or not. You have to wear multiple hats to have
Mm.
those full time benefits, right? So on the air, I am a morning show host for WFAV, but off the air, I'm the production director who's in charge of getting all the commercials produced that our salespeople sell. I mean, obviously we play commercials that have national campaigns attached to them, like McDonald's and things like that. But to all the local businesses that want to advertise, we record all those commercials. So I oversee all that, and I end up recording a lot of commercials myself too. So it can be kind of stressful, but it's definitely helped my editing skills and my
Hmm.
my production skills in the podcast world for sure. Like I feel like I can do things a lot quicker, just because of all my
Yeah.
experience with that so far.
Yeah.
Um,
Did
so
you
yeah,
know a lot of
I hope
editing
that wasn't.
beforehand? No, no, it's fine. I was gonna say, did you know a lot of editing beforehand? Because you were in a band. I assume you probably did a little bit of self-recording at the very least.
I didn't actually.
No.
Yeah, I wasn't a band before since I was like 13 until I was 25. Um, but it was actually our original bassist that got into the audio world and
Mm.
into the recording world. So we did do some demoing and stuff in his home studio at one point early on, and he he had a studio going for a while, and then he ended up becoming a live audio engineer, and so that's what he does now, which is aside from
Hmm.
what you were asking. But where I really when I was in school in 2014, I actually started podcasting before I got that first gig in radio because I was like, well, because my dream was to be on the radio. That's why I was there. That's what I wanted my new career, my new job to be. And I thought if I'm going to try to get a job on the radio, I need to gain some kind of experience, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So that's where podcasting came in. And so that's when I really started to spend a lot of time getting familiar with Adobe Audition. And that's what I still use to this day. I feel like a lot of broadcasters use Adobe Audition. It's not really like used for music much, but
Hmm.
for podcasting and broadcasting and things like that. That's the software that I really know the
Hmm.
best. Like if I looked at Pro Tools, I would cry. So
Which is funny
and
because
there's
I
nothing,
think Pro
obviously
Tools
Pro
is like
Tools,
very intuitive. Yeah. But
right,
like
exactly. I would
that's
just
all I've ever
cry. I'd
lived
be
in.
like, right. I was gonna say for you, I'm sure you're mostly familiar with Pro Tools, or
Mm.
now there's Logic and
Yep.
um, but anyway, so I really started to really I spent a lot of time on those early episodes I did. My first podcast was called Bangarang Radio, and I can't tell you how many hours editing those first episodes I did, just hours upon hours
Mm-hmm.
of editing, trying different uh, types of compression and EQ and all that stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's where the editing skills started to, you know, come in play.
You got an SM7, so it's kind of nice. I mean, a lot of that kind of comes rolls off and sounds just good in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a versatile mic, and so many people use it. It's
Mm,
from music to broadcasting to, I when I first started is I bought a Shure SM7B, and yeah, I absolutely love it. There's so many
mm.
great mics out there, though. It's overwhelming how many great mics there are. But yeah, this is obviously like a broadcast standard.
Yeah,
So
yeah. The price of those, like, because I was
we
gonna pick one up
use
this year,
we
the
use
price
the.
went up. Sorry.
Mhm. Yeah. No, you're all good. Yeah, I noticed that. My if I had the choice, I would upgrade to my mics and get EV RE20s. Those are my
RE20.
favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, RE20, yeah. And that's what we use at the radio station, and that's another like broadcast staple is the sound of that mic.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that the sound of the RE20 even more than I do the SM7B, but they're a little more expensive. And actually, my I don't make I don't make enough money to upgrade at this point. So, but
Yeah.
one day we'll get there. It's slowly but surely kind of thing. So
It's all
yeah,
right. Like, since I'm an audio engineer, I'm like, okay, well, I can get it close to sounding like that. So I'll just have like this one mic I use. It's like a handheld mic. I'm like, okay, cool, and I know no compression, everything well. So I'm like, all right, sounds pretty good.
yeah.
But I'm like, I
So
really would
how?
want to pick up one of those. So
Right, yeah. So how did you get your start as a audio engineer?
bands, yeah, I was in bands, and then I went to school in at Trinity in Deerfield, and I was originally gonna be a teacher, and then like I literally walked into like the class that was like a you know just starting teachers or whatever, and I'm sitting in this class
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to be a teacher. Why would I want to do this? Why did I choose this? It was kind of like that. You need to go to college for something. Like, well, I'm good at music. And so like I literally in the
Yeah.
middle of it like got up and left, and the lady's like, no, no, this is required. I'm like, I don't want to be a teacher. And she just looks at me weird. She's like, okay, and I like walked out. Like it's really weird. So then I got into doing music stuff more, and I went to Greenville College, which is in like Southern Illinois, which like was supposed to be huge for this recording stuff. For my parents wanted me to go to a Christian school, and I kind of wanted to go to one as well. And so I went to that, and it was like is awful. But like the best thing about it
Oh
was
man.
the studios were wide open. So it was garbage work, garbage, equipment, everything else, but the studios were wide open. So that's all I ever did was stay in the studios and learn. And so like that's how I kind of
Yeah.
I from 2002 until 2005, I stayed there and learned all that stuff. And then I had a studio in Valpo for a little while, and then it wasn't working out. And so I was like, hey, Ange, why don't we move to LA? And she weirdly was like, yes. So we up and
I like
moved
they said
while she was
weirdly.
pregnant. Well, she
Yeah.
was pregnant, and we already
Oh.
had another child, and I had no job. And so I
Okay.
moved to,
So no wonder why it was a weird.
yeah.
Yes.
So,
So do
yeah.
you current are you? I mean, do you just freelance at this point,
Yeah.
or yeah? Okay.
Well, part of the whole story of it is like I did freelance. I was a runner at the beginning at Conway. I met Jerry Finn there, right? Like 2 months, 3 months before he
Wow,
died. And
man, that's crazy.
it was a really cool thing, and he was super nice, dude. I always tell the stupid story to where like, a runner is supposed to be seen, not heard. And we had like Britney
Hmm.
Spears and all these giant people there, and he would not let you wash your dishes. Because he used to work there, and that's kind of why I chose it.
Uh,
And he was like, no, dude, I got it. Don't worry about it. I used to do your job, and whatever. take a load off. And I was like, okay, trying to be nice. And he would do all that kind of stuff. And then he asked some people my name, and he came up and just started shooting the crap with me one day, like as I'm like cleaning something up. I'm like, hey, and he would do that. And it was like the coolest thing ever. So, I mean, it was kind of nice to meet him. Then I, moved on to other studios and was assistants, runners, assistants, became like main engineer at a studio, did a lot of Disney stuff, like a lot of kids stuff. And
Kids Bop.
it was like for the TV
No,
shows.
I know. I
So
was just teasing. That was just the first thing that came to my mind.
to be honest, that wouldn't have been bad, but the TV shows are mainly like vocals, which is probably the best thing for me because I kind of sucked at cutting vocals.
Oh,
Like
okay.
I took my time, and now I'm like freaking bam, 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 bam. Let's go. Let's make sure we got it while everybody's feeling it. But yeah, I kind of got into it that way, and eventually went freelance because you made way more money. In fact, the last studio I was at didn't like withheld my money for like 6 months. They got so far behind in paying me, and so I left, and so I was doing freelance, which was made way more money, but eventually it just got so annoying working with passion projects basically, or like YouTube kids that were not very good at all. Like some of them were good, but like a lot of them were just like kids had parents that could bankroll, you know. So that just got annoying
Sure.
to me, and I wanted to start working with good music again. So I kind of quitted all this last year, started this podcast. I'm like, hey, I'm going to start a record label this year, and I want to talk to as much people in the industry as possible, kind of work maybe with like an indie rock / pop punk vibe, and just move forward that way. So that's my spiel of story. But
Awesome, man. That's awesome. Good for you. You know? I mean, it's hard I don't have to tell you it's hard starting over. So,
yeah,
good for you at diving in and going after probably I assume that's probably something you've always wanted to do.
yeah. I mean, I had the name of the label for a long time and kind of reconsidered it up to till this year to rename it something else. But yeah, it's always something that was on the back burner, and I was like, I'm just gonna do it now. And it just weirdly fell in 2020 in this craziness.
Right? You're just like, well, I already decided I was gonna do this. I'll just just keep going. So
Yeah,
that's awesome, man.
I mean, I thought I'd be out like watching, like I thought I'd already have a band side by September because I started it in January, and
Hmm.
obviously you can't get out and see bands and artists. I think not until recently, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that artists didn't really catch on to the whole online aspect of it,
You mean like playing shows online, like the live streams, or?
or any of the online aspects of it. I mean, doing videos. I've been doing some research on looking at some of the larger pop punk labels, and I
Hmm.
feel like they don't even put out, like they'll put out stuff every week that's like an image of the new song, artwork or whatever, and then the song behind it. And that's
Hmm.
what they'll put out on their YouTube or Facebook or anything else. And there's no content.
Yeah. I remember that's what you and Brian were talking about on the last episode about bands need to have content.
Hmm.
And yeah, I guess I I haven't seen there are some bands that I see that are good with content, but there's not a ton. Um it's hard to I don't know, it's something hard to do because you got to balance all these things already, right?
Hmm.
Between writing music, um, managing, your merch. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on for a DIY band, or even
Hmm.
if you're DIY and signed to a small label, like you're still pretty much doing everything yourself, right? Um, but one band that comes to mind in Chicago that I think is good at content, and I feel like they've been good at this for a while, is a band called Marina City. They seem to be very good at putting out constant content online. In fact, like not, I think it was this year they started it. They started a podcast specifically for their band.
Hmm.
I I have seen some other bands do that too,
Yeah.
um, and that that's a great idea. Why not just bring the cut the middleman, bring the content right to that fan,
Yeah.
or whoever it is you're trying to connect with, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's as far as labels with their content, yeah, I mean they obviously put out tons of music videos. I see that. That's pretty seems to be still a pretty important thing now
Hmm.
more than ever. But beside from that, I'm not sure.
I mean, like this week
I don't
specifically, I'm not gonna name them all, but it was basically like
no.
the big current four. Even if you go of the pop punk realm, like you go there and you're like, okay, at least you're putting something out. That's great. And then I
Mhm.
looked for like, okay, are the artists doing anything on their like YouTubes or Facebook? And like maybe they might have like a good thing going on their Instagram or something. But like everything
Mhm.
else is just not. I mean, you seem to be doing pretty well even with just your podcast. Like I see you do a really good job. Like you were shooting stuff to me like, hey, I'm going to be on Josh's podcast next week. Like just creating content that's like, hey, I'm doing this or that. I'm on this other podcast, or I'm going to have these artists. And you're doing stuff in at least 1 or 2 posts a day. You're tagging the people that should be tagged. You created, limited run merch. I mean, to be honest, your podcast is doing lot better than most of the bands that I've been looking at.
Well, that's extremely flattering. I don't know about that, but thank you. I'm trying, since it's been about a month. I think it's been a month since I started doing the podcast twice, putting out 2 episodes twice a week. So since I'm doing 2 episodes, it just gives more reason to be posting about what's coming up and teasing an episode or the limited edition Halloween merch was just like that was just like an idea that just hit me and kind of last minute too because it I think I got the idea must have been Monday or Tuesday, I think. And we're already in Halloween. Like it's something I should have thought of already, but I
Hmm.
thought, "Oh, I'm going to try this." Because right now that's really like my only source of income for the podcast.
Hmm.
And so I was like, okay, how can I get people interested in in merch? And it's like, well, you need to have something that's not going to be there that long, right? And so I thought, well, gosh, so many people are just, especially in the punk genre, are just so infatuated with Halloween. So I thought, I'll throw together some Halloween merch and see if anyone bites, um, so yeah, thank you for that. I really I really appreciate that. I try to at least a day or two before a new episode is coming out. I usually try to have a graphic to post.
Hmm.
Um, it's saying, "Hey, this is coming out on such and such a date with this person." And then, yeah, if I'm going to be on somebody's podcast too, I mean, it's it's an honor to be asked to be, here on your podcast. I mean, anytime someone asks me to be on their podcast, it never gets old. It's always just like a huge, huge honor to be asked of that. So
Yeah.
so
I mean, it's
so
always
thank
fun
you
to
for
just
that.
talk about crap, especially if it's something you like.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. And that's that's the best thing if whatever it is that you're going to do, whether you're starting a podcast or you're starting a band or whatever, you want to go for the thing you're most passionate about, right? So that's why I ditched the other podcast that I was doing because I was like, I love pop punk and I'm obsessed with pizza. I'm like, this is perfect, So that's why I was like pop punk and pizza. Boom. There it is. So and
Yeah.
it's been going well. So
Good deal. One of the things before I started the record label, like obviously, when I was saying like it was getting annoyed with all the, the music that I basically had to chop up piece by piece by piece
mhm.
to get a decent vocal. Um, I was like, you know what? I'm really good at making deep dish pizza. We should have a deep dish pizza place out here in California because 99% of pizza in Los Angeles sucks, like really bad. Coming from like outside Chicago, to where like if you're not a good pizza, you don't survive. So like,
Yeah, I was gonna say you know all about good pizza because you're originally from almost any place in the Midwest has great pizza. I feel
I
like
agree.
you know
You
it's
could
just
walk into like just some crappy like little town and you'd be like, oh, there's a pizza place and it's good. It
right.
just is. I don't know what the
Yeah,
deal is.
we just know how to do the pizza. I don't know I don't know what it is,
Los
but yeah, I've
Angeles
heard
does
that.
not.
Right, that's what I've heard. I keep people keep telling me that. I mean, I have had some pizza that wasn't too bad out in California. It wasn't in Los Angeles.
Mm.
Last time I was in California was in Carlsbad, which is near
Mm.
like
Yeah.
San Diego. And I can't remember the name of the pizza place, but it wasn't too bad. But that was like 10
Hmm.
years ago. So,
Yeah, there are
um,
good ones. Like
but
you get to know the good ones, but like of the percentage wise, I remember like when I lived in Valpo one day when I was like a teenager, I was like, how many pizza places are here? And I opened up the yellow pages. I count like 20 pizza places. It wasn't just Valpo, and I'm like, holy crap! And they're all right, but like out here, gosh, there's pizza places everywhere. They're just not that great.
you said you have an idea for a deep dish pizza place?
Oh no, like that's before I kind of like either go this way or that way kind of deal. Like I can't, be spending all my time, trying to do both of them. So I was like, I want to try to maybe do a deep dish pizza place out here. And I was going to start it as
Hmm.
like a farmer's market thing. Cause we have a lot of farmer's markets out here since,
Oh,
it's beautiful,
oh yeah.
every day of the year. And, the amount of crap I had to kind of jump through and the hoops that I looked up and I had to deal with was just, it was insane.
Sure.
Even just starting the label, it was insane. Like how much stuff I had to worry about in the areas that I'm technically working in. It's ridiculous the amount of
Yeah,
money I have to pay.
I've always wondered, because I feel like almost everyone in the music industry has wanted to start a label of their own at one point or another. And so that's something I've definitely, there was a point where I was like, I want to start a record label. Sometimes I still think about it once in a while, and I'm like, what is involved with that? Because I don't know a ton about it, but I imagine, yeah, there's got to be, if you're going to do it right, that is, there has to be so many hoops and things you have to research and go through.
Well, just starting the LLC, I know not every single state's like that, and I'm hoping to maybe move back to like outside Chicago to continue it in the future. But for right now, we're here. But just in Los Angeles to have the LLC, it's $800 a year.
Wow. Yeah, that's a
So
lot.
I mean, that's almost like a vinyl pressing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's your there's your pressing right there.
hmm
Man. Well, I'm sure you'll get it all, figured out.
yeah, I'm saving up money every week. I'm working hard. I'm actually doing stuff on the weekends like this, just Uber Eats or something else, and it's
Mhm.
it's all going there, and it's looking good right now. So I'm kind of
That's
happy
good.
about it.
Good. Good. I'm glad
But
to hear that.
what are some like road bumps that you might have run into doing the podcast?
Oh man. Um
Oh, hold on, sorry. Screw you, Dad. No,
Can we talk to your dad on the podcast?
you
Hi,
don't want to.
Dad.
Hello, Mr. Smith. Oh,
That just sounds so official, Mr. Smith. It's kind of
right.
like that old movie with why am I gonna
You
James
thinking The Matrix?
Stewart. No, I was thinking
Oh yeah,
James Stewart. Mr. Smith
Goes to
Goes to
Washington.
Washington.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good movie.
It is a good movie. It's a classic movie. Roadblocks. I feel like this is gonna sound so cheesy and so corny because I feel like everyone and their mom says this about themselves. But it's true, and I guess that just means we're all going through the same or similar things, and we don't realize it until we talk about it. But my mental health
Hmm.
has probably been the biggest roadblock for me as far as doing this podcast. There have been a lot of times there were periods where I wasn't like I would take off the podcast and I wouldn't be putting out new episodes, and that might go on for that went on for months at a time here and there. The first time I took a break was actually for when my son was born, so that was obviously different. But all the other uh, time I took off was because of my mental health, and so just like being able to get over yourself and find the best way to manage your mental health, no matter what it is you're trying to accomplish, whether it's a podcast or a band or whatever. Like that, to me, like yourself is the biggest roadblock. It's not your competition.
Hmm.
It's literally yourself.
Hmm.
And I feel like uh, I'm feeling better than I ever have, and the things have never been better with the podcast and just life all around. Um, and so I feel that that was the biggest roadblock because like as we said, I've been doing this for 4 years and I'm only at episode 117. And so
Mm,
if I hadn't taken all that time off, I would have been
yeah.
way, I would have been way past that.
Yeah.
Um, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone has a different journey. Everyone has a different path. That's totally cool.
Mm,
But yeah, I would say that has been the biggest roadblock for me doing this podcast is my mental health and finding a way to manage that so that I could function properly to be able to do the podcast continually on a regular basis. And I'm grateful that I've been able to do that and thankful to the people that have supported me, from people that just listen to the podcast, to my friends, to my family. Um, without having that support system, I wouldn't be able to keep going and stay as busy with it.
hmm.
So yeah, that would be my answer.
Cool, cool.
I'm sorry, it's so like I'm
No.
still not used to being interviewed myself. It's still so strange to me. Like I actually, I'm so used to being on the other side of the fence that I forget what it's like to be on this side of the fence. So,
No worries. How does because you've had quite a few like awesome because I'd like scroll through. I tried to start from the beginning at the beginning, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll go through from the beginning to the end,
mhm.
and then I'll be like, oh, whoa, no, he talked to Vinny. Oh, he talked to the I'm like, oh, I'm gonna like, jump in there and listen to those because I'm very interested in that. So
Right.
how hard is it to get a hold of some of these people?
Some some people are hard to get a hold of. And you have to try multiple times. Some sometimes the ones you think that are going to be really hard to get a hold of don't end up being hard at all.
Mm,
Um, and sometimes it just doesn't happen, and that's
yeah.
fine. Um, and it's I was just talking about this actually on the podcast about how important it is to continue to reach out to whoever it is that you're trying to talk to or get someone's attention. And
Hmm.
obviously, keep reaching out in a proper way, not like a way where you're like a freaking
Badgering
pest and
them.
like, okay, and the person's going to be like, oh yeah, that dude's crazy.
Yeah.
But like let's say there's, let's say it's 5 years from now, your record label's doing really well and you get tons of submissions, but there's this one band that you have not replied to, and they sent you an email like 2 weeks ago, but you still haven't gotten back to them, and they're thinking, oh well, he just must not be interested at all. But the fact is, you're probably like super swamped and super busy, right?
Mm, yeah.
So really, it's a matter of go ahead and check back in with that person to see if they even got your email or your phone call or whatever it is, and just like a follow up, be like, hey, just checking in to see if you were able to consider my last email or whatever.
Hmm.
So there have been some of the guests I've had on the podcast. I've had to. Speaking of, you mentioned Vinny of formerly of Less Than Jake. Now,
Hmm.
when I first had Less Than Jake on the podcast, I just interviewed Chris, and this was back in 17, or was it 18? I think it was 18, in the winter of 18. He was a person I think I had to reach out to um, more than once,
Hmm.
and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, everyone's busy,
Yeah.
and
Well, he's
that
got
doesn't.
podcasts and stuff too. Yeah. Well, that is pretty
Right,
recent, but yeah.
right, exactly, and so sometimes things you just get lost in the mix, um, and there's been other episodes like that. And I do get asked that question. Well, how do you get in contact with these people? And
Hmm.
honestly, I don't want to. There's no secret to the matter. Like I'm not like
Yeah.
withholding information. It's really the first thing I always do is I look up to see who their publicist is. And if
Mm.
they've got a contact for a publicist, that's the first person that I reach out to. And a lot of the times that is the most ends up being the most successful because usually the publicist gets right back to me right away because obviously that's their job.
Exactly. They're like, "Oh, this could be something that makes me look good because I do my
Right.
job."
Right, exactly. They want to continue to get paid. So if someone f- presents them with something cool, they're like, "Oh, I want to present this to my artist and,
Mhm.
you know, be like, "Hey, there's this guy who wants to talk to you." Um so, that's honestly what I do with these artists. I usually contact their publicist. I try not to message them through social media to try to book something. There have been times that I've done that,
Mhm.
but very, very few and far between. I try to stay away from that. And if that person doesn't have a publicist, then from that point, I'll try to find some other form of an email address, whether it's a manager or it's like a
Mhm.
general email address or whatever it is. I just try to get a hold of that and go from there. But most of the time, the bigger artists they have publicists, so I always start there. So
Yeah.
that's usually how it ends up working.
I've tried to get a few like decently sized people and like they get back either real quick and the people that aren't don't at all. Or the people that aren't
Yeah.
big. I feel like because I've had like three podcasts now.
Okay.
One was like called a band's life to where I was like, hey, I'm gonna just have like local bands on and just talk to them, and that was the worst. Like getting a hold of any local bands, awful, or even bands that were just smaller, like across the country or
What
something
was
like that.
what was the what was the issue with that?
They just wouldn't reply. Like
Really?
I'd shoot them like an email, like, hey, I'm having this podcast or whatever, and nothing. And then every once in a while, I'd be like, I'd wait like a week or so, and then I'd shoot them like a Twitter something or a
Mm-hmm.
Facebook something like that, and hey, whatever. And sometimes you could see that they've read it or looked at it, and they just won't respond. And I'm like, okay, I mean, this is kind of like I'm not a huge podcast, but this is kind of like free advertising, like talk to me
Yeah,
for
that's
30
really
minutes and
surprising.
content.
Mm-hmm.
To be
Right.
honest, like.
Yeah, content as well. Yeah, I've
Mhm.
rarely come across that with bands that aren't as well known or local bands here in Chicago or wherever that local band is in that scene. Um,
Mhm.
Even when I was starting out, I mean there might have been times where it was hard to get a hold of that person. I think yeah, probably in the beginning, I guess there were some instances like that, but mostly
Mhm.
they were like super stoked. They were really excited and they're like, "Yeah, we want to do this," you know? So,
Mhm.
um but yeah, I do know what you're talking about though. And it just depends. I mean, obviously, um the right local band you're not going to have that issue with because
Yeah.
they've got their ducks in a row. They're going to be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, this guy's got a podcast. Let's do it." You
Mhm.
know? I mean, if they've got all their ducks in a row, they'll be like, "Yeah, how's let me look at my schedule.
Yeah.
Does Sunday work for you at 2 o'clock?" I mean, so they'll have a little more organization. You know, so
Absolutely.
yeah,
I mean, I have friends of Larry Livermore on my Facebook, and I added him on Facebook, and he was like, "Boom," to add me back, and I was like, "I'm just gonna ask him real quick." And I was like, "Hey, would you be interested in being on the podcast?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, sure. Just give me an email. We'll set this up like
that's
that."
awesome.
And I'm like scared at the beginning. Holy crap!
Yeah,
I didn't
no,
think that was gonna happen.
right. You would and I mean he's like a perfect guy to have on your podcast considering his background. Um
Exactly.
yeah, I just noticed he was on some other podcasts recently and I haven't listened to it yet or maybe it hasn't been released yet. But he's always someone I've always enjoyed
Hmm.
hearing him talk. Whether it was, like a podcast interview or was watching him on some documentary. Um, Probably the last thing I watched him on was the documentary on East Bay punk
Yeah.
rock that Green Day put out. And that was really good. I don't know. Did you see that?
I did not actually. When I was doing a little bit of research on him the other day, I saw that he had that, and I was like, dude, I gotta pick this up. So I got that
Yeah.
ordered. I just watched, was it the Pick It Up, the ska one, not too long ago.
Oh yes, that one is
Um,
so good.
mm,
Man, I died laughing when I saw that for the first time. There's just so many funny moments and obviously very serious moments too, but that was a really good documentary. And the East Bay Punk one, super
mm,
good as well. Both of those I highly suggest if anyone's looking for music documentaries to check out.
yeah,
Those are both great. Very
yeah.
well done.
Have you had Jason Simon on yours yet? He does unoriginal vinyl. I had him on probably a month or so ago, maybe 2 months ago, and he does like all these re-releases of like pop punk stuff
Oh,
from a while
really?
back. So like,
No, I
and
I
he
don't
actually just
know
put out
him.
stuff with the newest Slick Shoes album they put
Oh,
out
okay. I still have
just
yet
on
to even.
vinyl.
I still have to listen to that album.
Mhm.
Actually, now that you
And he was a
mention
part
it.
of the Pick It Up thing too, though. Like, so he's his.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I
Sorry,
don't.
that's why it
No, no,
connects.
no, no. I mean, that would make sense. I don't really know like the people behind it, their
Mm,
names. But I've interviewed some of the bands, obviously, that are a
mhm,
part of that documentary. But as far as anyone that was in the production or like producing that '90s ska documentary,
mm.
I haven't talked to anybody now. But that would be fun though, for sure. I thought about it when it was first happening, when they were uh, doing like the Kickstarter for it,
Mhm.
but it just never happened, unfortunately. But
Like, here, you should have this one. I'll be your, you
yeah.
should do this. No. For your merch stuff, like you're using Teespring, and I have not. Most of the time, people are like kind of try to stray away from that. Is that something that is working well, or have you thought about maybe doing like a smaller run in from home like area?
Well, here's the thing. When I first had merch made, uh, probably like 3 years ago, I used a local printer, in
Mm,
Chicago, a local screen printer, which is usually what I'm all about. But right now, I'm not in a financial place where I can actually pay to get merch made and then
yeah.
sit on it and try to sell it. So I ended up discovering the Teespring website. I'm always trying to look up different, just learn new things about podcasting and obviously what others are doing.
Hmm.
And I was doing some reading through articles one day, and I stumbled across Teespring, and I thought, oh, okay, this is really cool. Um, Obviously, like I feel it's it's a double-edged sword for me. I don't know if that's the right term, but I like it and I don't
Hmm.
like it at the same time. Just because one, I'm not supporting a local printer,
Yeah.
I'm supporting a small local business. Um, but then I guess the green side is I don't have to spend money getting merch printed, and I can have all these different options. It's like it's a good and a bad thing.
Yeah.
Um, so and I don't have to worry about sending out any orders or anything like that either because I'm already so busy sending out emails or answering emails, editing, uh, all that stuff.
Hmm.
Doing interviews. It's hard to, okay, now I got to send out merch orders. Like I don't have time for that too. So
Yeah.
it sucks because I feel bad.
You
But
shouldn't feel bad.
I don't know. I just because like I said, I'm going with, I'm not going with a local business. I do firmly support local businesses, and the fact that I'm not doing that currently with my merch, I hope if I get in a better position one day, I will definitely that'll be one of the first things I change
Mhm.
is um, having merch printed by a local person or a small business somewhere, and
Yeah.
and I hope I get to that point someday. But currently, I can't afford that.
I
Um,
know that percentage wise, it's just like a whole nother ball game. Like I know it's a lot harder to
Yeah.
deal with. You got to ship it yourself and everything else. But like when you're kind of getting it print, at least at decent runs, on your like with a local printer, you're going to be doing a lot more money compared to Teespring. But I understand 100%. Like for one, you don't have to do it. For two, you don't have to ship it. And then you could have all these other options. That totally makes sense, especially like at the beginning of a lot of stuff. But I've noticed that some larger like YouTube channels that used to do Teespring because they used to have it built in are like, no, we're just gonna do it ourselves. Like this makes way more
Mm,
sense. I
yeah.
don't know if you ever watch Linus Tech Tips, which is like I'm kind of like a huge fan of them just because of their how they've kind of attacked this whole content kind of thing what they do, and they moved away completely from that, so they do all their stuff in their hometown.
Yeah, I obviously the plus side of going directly to the printer is your profit margin is bigger,
Exactly.
like you were saying.
Hmm.
But I still like I'm kind of pinching pennies over here for myself, because I own a house now, and I've got a son and just all these bills. I'm a single dad. I'm not making, my podcast isn't making money right now.
Hmm.
I'm not getting rich off of it or anything like that at this point.
Have you
That's
tried
the
to get any
dream.
sponsors?
Not recently, but I'm currently working on trying to roll out some kind of idea to try to, reel in some sponsors, um, because it truly is my dream to be able to actually make a living, off of this, and maybe be able to start doing radio part time, and then I can do this part time as well, and I can make an income off of it. Because I enjoy doing this so much more because I'm my own boss, and pop punk is the music I love, and I love talking to people like you, and talking to all kinds of different bands or people associated with the scene, and it's just truly a something I love to do. So hopefully that'll happen one day. But yeah,
Cool,
I'm
cool.
working on trying to roll out a business plan on that. Not sure how soon. That's one of those things that's like a slow progress. Like I'm working on a new website too, and that's just been,
Yep.
whenever I have some spare time, I'll work on it.
Same. I just bought a new WordPress theme a while ago, like the safest one because WordPress has its problems, and
Right.
and so I'm like all right, building this all stuff on my own, just piecing it together. But yeah, I get it. Uh, for this podcast, I mean, it would seem to be doing pretty decent. I really like the curve of like how it kind of started, and hope it continues. So I'm like hoping to look in the future, like, all right, where can we get maybe some sponsors from?
Right.
Um, Feed back
Yeah.
into the label somehow.
Right, exactly, and it's really hard because so many other people are trying to do the same thing, and
Yeah.
but there's so many people in the world that you know it's got to be accomplished somehow, you know.
Mhm.
So
So to get to pop punk, because we haven't even freaking talked about it at all. What are some of your favorite bands within the last like 4 or 5 years, like newer artists?
well, one of my favorites is Stand Atlantic.
Mm,
Um, I just interviewed Bonnie, their lead vocalist, and they're definitely one of my favorite bands to come out of the scene in the last 4 years or so.
hmm.
I really like Sleep on It from Chicago. Their most recent record was just so good. And I liked them before that, of course. I supported them before. Excuse me. Oh wow, I'm burping over here. Um, uh, I supported them before they started to, gain a name for themselves, and I really think their record "Pride and Disaster" probably deserves more credit. Um, just because I can't tell you how many times I just put that record on repeat
Hmm.
when it came out a year ago. I think it's been already, or about a year ago. So. Um, Trying to think of who else. They're not really they've been around longer than this, but I really in the last couple of years started to get more into Seaway. I
Hmm.
really like them. Of course, neck deep, but they've been around longer than the last 4 years. But these are bands that I just kind of started to, I would say, give a chance kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
because
Have you listened to Wilmette at all?
yes, I actually have. They were supposed to. I was actually supposed to record a podcast with them not too long ago. I ended up having to reschedule, and now we're still in the process of rescheduling.
Mm.
But yeah, those guys are great. I'm glad you brought them up. Yeah, definitely, um, a band, to start up in the last 4 years that I really like
I just know that they're
for
kind of
sure.
in your area, which is kind of funny because they're
Yes,
not even. I don't even think they're from Wilmette, but they're called Wilmette. I don't
I
know.
don't. I know they're in that vicinity though, like the
Hmm.
the northern part of like Chicago suburbs, whatever you want to call it. I know they're up in that neck of the woods, but yeah, I don't know if anyone actually lives in Wilmette or is from. I would assume somebody is from Wilmette, but what's kind of cool about that too is I like how they're called Wilmette, and that's also where Fall Out Boy is from.
Hmm.
They're from Wilmette, I'm pretty sure. So it's kind of cool that there's this new generation of pop punk with the name of the town that Fall Out Boy is from. So
It's like a pop punk emo thing to do,
yeah,
like Ann Arbor and all just like names of
true.
towns.
Yeah, yeah. Why not? I mean, maybe I should start a band called Bradley or Kankakee or Mantino, the towns that I live in, and give that a whirl, and maybe it'll have something for me. I don't know.
Yeah,
Most actually, probably what'll happen is people won't be able to. They'll be like, "How do you say?" I mean, they'd be able to pronounce
mm.
Bradley, but like the other ones,
Kankakee.
Bourbonnais, right? Kankakee.
That'd
They'd
be a
be
hard
like,
one.
yeah, they'd be like, "How do you say can Kika?" And then with Bourbonnais, everyone, it's obviously a French name, so everyone always
Mm.
butchers it, and they think it's like Bourbonus or Bourbonnais, or like Illinois,
Well, then on
that
top
kind of
of it, you
thing.
got Jacques LaMore. Oh my
Yeah, and
god,
people butcher the Jacques part too. On the
Jacques.
radio. Yeah, see, there's Jacques, Jacques, Jacques. Uh, yeah, I could just go Jackie. I just could go on and on with that. But I thought I thought choosing the most popular like male French name would actually work, but most people don't know it, which I'm surprised because it's like the most generic male French name out there, besides
Mm.
Pierre, of course.
Yeah,
You know,
might
but
have been a little bit easier.
yeah, maybe I
I feel
should
like
have.
when people see it though, like because the first time I saw it, I was like Jacques. Oh no, Jacques. Got it. You're like,
Jacques, yeah, like Jacques Cousteau. That's what
yeah.
I tell everyone. My name is Jacques, and they're like, "Oh, like Jacques Cousteau," and I said, "Yeah, there you go." So
As soon as
he's
they
like,
see it and hear it, they're like, "Oh, I got it. No, I
hmm,
got
yeah,
it."
he's like the most famous Jacques probably.
What about
So
what about labels? I know that like when I was growing up, like you were kind of like attached to like your favorite labels, whether
yeah.
it be Tooth and Nail or Victory or Drive Through. What do you feel about? Do you feel like labels? People see them still that way today, or no?
Um, I don't know. I kind of wonder. I almost feel like to give when you ask me that, the first thing I thought of was I need to interview people from that age range when those labels started. Like
Mhm.
I'm trying to think. Pure Noise or Rise Records, I think they started around the same time. One of them started around 2009. I can't remember which. But I
Mm.
almost feel like I need to talk to people that are a little bit younger than me, and now that they're a little older, be like, okay, so how do you are you like fully in love with this with this
Mhm.
label and everything they put out? Um, I definitely I don't think it's not in the same way. It's not in the same vein. Because I think what really for, Tooth and Nail and Drive Through and Victory and those labels, I think for our generation, I think was a little different just because we had the comps, the
Mm,
compilation CDs. And
yes.
I think that was a big push on why people became obsessed with certain labels. Like to this day, people are just so obsessed with the nostalgia of drive-through records. Like they're
Hmm.
just and I don't blame them. Like so many amazing bands came from that label, just like Victory.
Yep.
Um, and I think that has a lot to do with it. And of course, now in this modern day and age, we have Spotify playlists or Apple Music playlists, or
Yeah.
so there's no comps, but there's playlists, and obviously record labels do have their own playlists. But I I don't like. I guess I haven't done enough like research or information to see if people are attached to a certain label or not.
Hmm.
I mean, and the thing is, there's so many more bands now. There's so many more record labels now too.
Hmm.
Um, every day I'm learning about a new record label that I've
Yeah, I'm
never.
actually keeping a spreadsheet of them, and I'm like, holy crap! Like some of these larger pop punk bands and even other bands are on these. We're on these teeny tiny labels, or
Yeah.
in fact, a lot of them are moving to like just doing it themselves or staying on the smaller labels.
hmm And it's interesting how, with the way technology is and the way the music industry is now, that there are so many labels popping
Hmm.
up and starting up. Not to discredit you or anything like that, because I know that's what you're
No.
doing. But even though a band has everything they need at their fingertips, pretty much
Yeah.
without a label, somehow there's still a need for a label,
Yeah.
and it's that's something I'm still fascinated with to know. I almost feel like it's not so much about maybe it's not so much about a money thing. Maybe it's just having that, hey, we're on such and such a label, and just
Hmm.
being able to say that. I don't know, but also
It's
probably
almost like
another
they're
reason.
knighted.
Yeah, yeah. But at the same time, when you think about physical copies of music, I mean, record sales continue to climb, vinyl record sales.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's why these labels are popping up, because they see that opportunity, you know. Even if it is with a small DIY band, if you can provide vinyl for them, their fans are probably going to be stoked.
Hmm.
If it's a good release, I mean that people, they love vinyl, and myself included. I mean, I think it's just maybe that's why. I don't know.
No.
but but yeah, I'm curious. I have the same curiosity as you do. If people will be like, "Oh, Rise Records is my favorite," or
Yeah.
"Pure Noise is just
Or
my
hopeless or
favorite," or
fearless or
"Hope."
whatever. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, Hopeless and Fearless have both been around for quite a long time now. I mean, like I said, I Pure Noise or Rise Records have been around for about
Hmm.
10.
Yeah.
Um, so they're starting to get some age on them. Um, another great small label is Bad Time Records.
Hmm.
Um, you got Mutant League Records here in
Mutant League's
Chicago,
nice. Yeah.
which is
In
what
Vogue.
Wilmette is on. Um,
Hmm.
you've got, I mean, there's so many.
There's a bunch of them. Yeah. It's kind of weird. Like I know there's a bunch popping up, especially I guess especially now when people's got a lot of time on their hands or they're forced to stay home. Um, I don't know if we got into it a lot in the last podcast, and I talk about it quite a bit in this stupid podcast. But like my whole idea behind it is like these artists aren't making like hardly anything, and even when they're decent, like it's hard to make. It's just hard to make money. Hard to be a band, and I just you see the rise of kind of like I hate to call it this, but it's like in the influencers or whatever else they're doing, and I just feel like a band could fit into that and not be stupid in such a beautiful way. Like I don't know if you remember it, but like in the early 2000s when Blink 182 was still the trio that they were, and they had on their website they had tons of videos and stuff of them just doing stupid crap, or back like behind the scenes recording, or whatever it was they were doing, and even their music videos were just them being silly and fun, and not like, I don't know, every other music video nowadays. If you look at any band, it's like,
Hmm.
them lacklusterly playing. But anyway, like my idea of the label is kind of a lot like, and I know I mentioned him before, is like Linus Tech Tips, to where he has, I know I have it written down here. How many channels does he have? There's Linus Tech Tips, Tech Quickies, Short Circuit, Carpool Critics, Channel Super Fun, Tech Linked, Linus Cat Tips, like
My
just
gosh.
a silly amount of stuff like that. And I really feel like a record label could work really well like that, to where they could kind of jump into the video sphere, help these artists like promote and do content for themselves, whether it be like something silly and fun that they do. And you could have sponsor spots at the beginning and end of it, like in all these like Linus videos. They could, if they're doing something fun and silly that they're gonna record themselves doing, there could be like a sponsorship for just that video. Obviously on YouTube there's AdSense and YouTube Premium pays and channel memberships and super chats. Then you can move to Twitch, whether you do live shows or whatever you do on there. There's a myriad of different ways that you can monetize your band, and I feel like that they're either scared to do it or they don't know how to do it, and that's what I want to do. And none of these labels, like in fact, like I've been researching all these labels. None of these labels are doing hardly any of this. A lot of bands right now are doing kind of like, we're gonna set up a live show and we're gonna have you pay to watch our live show, which is cool. I'm not sure if I'm completely into that, but maybe not seeing a show for so long, maybe you would be.
I would think
And
so, because I mean, sure, there's some drive-through or drive-in shows happening here and there, but it's
mhm,
only in certain parts of the country. I mean, what about everybody
exactly.
else around the world, you know?
Hmm.
So it's kind of like, well, this is the best we can do at this point, you know? It's
Yeah,
kind of like what that is. I feel like, it's like this is the best we can do, so this is what we're gonna do.
yeah.
I mean, and at least they're doing that. At least you can go watch a live stream of
Hmm.
you know um I just saw the Maine announce
Yeah.
they're going to do like a special Halloween live stream, and so is Wonder Years. They're doing Blink 182, and
Hmm.
then they're also going to be playing their own stuff as well. So I thought that was cool. um
At least they're like,
y-
yeah, that's at least they're kind of like doing more than just like it's just us basically at practice. So
yeah.
like, I like it. It's a great idea, but I feel like they've only done it because of the situation we're in, and
Hmm.
not taken advantage of like all of these amazing ways that they can monetize their band. Because again, with this Linus Tech Tip guys, he has like 25, 30 people that work for him, and they have this giant production area, and he's just doing YouTube. Like he's just doing tech stuff on YouTube. I mean, like it's fun to watch ish, but I feel like a band, if you could get the fans to watch it, he was saying that 0.5% of like his subscribers are what pay for most of the bills. And so
Yeah.
like once you get to that point, I feel like that would be great. And that's kind of where that's where what I want to try to do. And I want to try to find a band that's kind of like a Blink 182 ish. I know that's kind of the biggest band, biggest pop punk band, but a big Blink 182 ish band to where like they have a range of the music they can do. They could be serious, they could be completely stupid, and have a fun time. They could shoot videos and doing just whatever they want to do. And I really think that is the way to go in the future.
Hmm.
And I haven't seen the label do that yet, and I'm scared. Like I scared of trying to ask artists to do that. Do you think that they
Hmm.
would? Do you think that like bands and artists would not be willing to do something like this?
Well, it's like anything else. It's having the balance between having that content, but also spending time creating your music too,
Hmm.
So I don't think it's a bad idea. It's almost like kind of what it makes me think of. It's kind of like moving your own little media company in house, you know,
Hmm.
um, to where like instead of going to alternative press and they or let's say alternative press comes to you and they say, "Hey, we want your band Awesome as fuck is their name. We want, we want AF or ASF or whatever, we want them to show us what it's like cooking in their kitchen,
Hmm.
cooking a pizza, let's say." And so instead of that being released on alternative press and all their stuff, like that would be something that you would do, right?
Yeah.
On your, you know,
Like
and what
on their specific channels. Yeah.
yeah, on the labels specific or on the labels specific channels or on the
Probably a little bit of
bands.
both. A little
Yeah.
bit of both.
Okay. Which also reminds me, speaking of cooking and bands, there are some bands that are creating content on Twitch. I have seen more and
Hmm.
more bands doing that with the pandemic. One of them being Sleep on It. Um, I think that they might have even done this before the pandemic, but I know during the pandemic, they have all kinds of different little like shows that they do. I know they do a cooking one, or at least they
Hmm.
were for quite a while earlier this year. It was like once a week they would cook a certain dish, like a
Hmm.
certain meal, and they would do it live on Twitch. Um, and then for a while there, they were doing like top 10 lists of different bands in the scene. I know they did like best Mayday Parade songs and best Fall
Hmm.
Out Boy songs. And they did all these things on Twitch. And I thought that was cool. It's probably kind of similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's a great idea. I think Twitch is kind of, maybe for the food thing, it's all right for, but like to
Hmm.
any top 10 lists or something like that would definitely live a lot better on YouTube because then you'd get some evergreen content from it.
Hmm.
Plus, you could get AdSense once you've kind of built up enough, watch time or whatever.
Right.
Um, I mean, yeah, that's kind of what I want to do, and I'm
Hmm.
just I'm looking for a good band, which is it's just really hard to find a decent one that's all not already like taken up because I feel like even some of these middle ground labels are just like snatching these bands, whether or not they're probably giving them anything other than maybe doing like pressing their disc for them.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, just trying to convince them. What would you suggest for me to try to convince them to go with something like this?
Um, you know, I'm,
'Cause I feel
I'm
like pop punk people or punk rock people, they sense BS and they're like, I don't want to deal with that. Like more than like a pop person or an artist, singer songwriter would.
yeah, I mean, it could almost work for any genre. It's really it's a
Yeah.
good question. It's a good question. I'm just trying to think of the best way to answer it. I don't know how you would convince them, but I think more and more. I think more and more bands are obviously realizing it's important to have a presence online. I mean
Yeah.
that's been an important thing for several years now since the
Hmm.
2000s. Um, it's always been like you got to have a presence online. And now it's even more so. Um,
Well,
so
now if they don't have it online, they don't have it at all. So,
right, exactly. Because the more followers you have, yada yada yada.
hmm.
So I I don't know what kind of convincing you would have to do, but I am almost certain there's a band out there that would be interested in
Mm.
something like that. Instead of so would you literally just focus on that for your label, or what would be the music part of it?
Well, well, since I'm like a producer, mixer, engineer, and everything else, I'd probably be at the very least be able to be helping them and doing all of the above with the producing of music and recording it and mixing it. If they wanted to use someone else, that might be like a different conversation, monetary wise. But um, I definitely handle them recording stuff, and I think we'll probably be focused more on like a single kind of aspect, especially at the beginning. Just put out a single once a month. Focus on releasing those, especially since Spotify is a lot better off. Like you're gonna hit the algorithm a bit better in Spotify if you're releasing a single once a month, or at least I think the best would be like to every 2 weeks, but once a month would just be easier. And then yeah, I mean we just focus on that, and we'd focus on building content, just a ton of different kinds of content and see what works.
No, that's I mean, that's definitely something needed and it's important. It's just finding that balance. Like
Hmm.
just like life.
Yeah.
Finding that balance between all that's what I'm constantly doing. My therapist used to always use the spinning plates on the uh stick reference.
Yeah.
She's like, you gotta, spin this plate, but you gotta go over here and spin this other one before it falls over, and then you go back to this other one, and then this one over here, and then
Hmm.
you got to keep all these plates spinning at the same time, and so that's almost like a band. You got to
Yeah.
keep all those things spinning. You got to constantly be putting out music, but then like you're wanting to focus on content, so
Hmm.
and you constantly got to be putting out content to,
Hmm.
you know.
And I think the music though, like, is uh able to be like contentized, to where you're like, okay, well, how about, you when you write a song once a week, you can record like your process writing it, or showing songs to people once a week, saying, hey, here's the songs that I wrote this week. What do you guys think? Kind of deal. And then like in that month, you pick one of them that you're going to record. Just
Hmm.
what you're doing is just needs to be, I don't know, just chronicle
Yeah.
chronicled in what's
Hmm.
going on. And just it's just more and more content out there. It's more and more opportunities for people to see it, more and more people opportunities for people to engage in it, more opportunities for you to make money off of it.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great idea. I think you'll definitely find some type of niche or some way to streamline that.
Hmm.
You know,
That's why I want to work with one artist first. And I want to jump in.
well.
Some of these smaller labels have so many bands. You're like, how do you survive?
Yeah, you gotta have the guinea pig, as they say.
Hmm. Exactly.
So, yeah, yeah, definitely.
Thanks for coming on, by the way. I mean, it's awesome to be able to talk to somebody else in the sphere that's kind of like, it's not exactly my age, but close-ish to my age. That's doing something that I kind of feel like I'm dorky doing. It's kind of nice to see like other people doing it. So I'm like, okay, that's not just, I don't know if I'm sure you feel kind of like similar, but like putting
Oh
stuff
no,
out there,
I
like,
I definitely do, and as I said, I'm very flattered that you asked me to be on, and it's always an honor to talk to someone else who's doing something similar. So I really appreciate your support of the podcast. It really means more than you know, and I'm really glad that you enjoy it that much to not only listen to it but to ask me to be on your podcast. So,
mm-hmm.
and I definitely think there's a great idea or something great to come out of what you're thinking of for your record label. So I wish you nothing but the best, and if I can help, let me know.
Well, thank you so much, man. Just being able to ask someone else that that knows a bit about the industry, and it's not 12 years old. I mean, it's been around at least and knows how the world works. It's nice to see someone else putting some of this stuff out in the world, and it's great stuff. I love anybody. I'm going to put all the links to your podcast and to your merch down there. I'm going to pick up one of your slice of pizza pop punk shirts, and I'm going to be wearing it in a couple weeks as soon as I
Well,
get here.
thanks,
So
man. Thank you. I
um,
appreciate that.
no problem, man.
If you
Uh,
ever get merch, I'm sure you'll be getting merch at some point. Let me know. I'll definitely return the favor. I'll be sure to share this up once it's out and everything.
nice. I appreciate it, man. All right.
Yeah, of
See you
course.
later.
All right. Take care, man.